Welcome to Jewish Culture in Sweden Online. I'm Elisabeth Åsbrink. I'm a writer and a journalist, and today I'll have a conversation with Sir Simon Schama. He is a university professor of art history and history at the Columbia University, and an award-winning author of 19 books translated into 15 languages. And he's also a writer-presenter of more than 50 documentaries about literature, art, and history on the BBC Two. Simon, hi, or should I say Sir Simon?
Just Simon, you know.
Good to see you again.
Commoner, serf, and subject.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So how call you Lady Elisabeth?
Oh, please don't. I won't know you talking to me then. So that'll only confuse me. So how are you? Everything?
Oh, it's okay. Yes, I mean, here I am, you know, up the Hudson Valley and with my grandchildren who are very small, and you know, a beaming 2-year-old face at breakfast is the best possible antidote to kind of pall of doom and the sense of both boredom and mortality, which is kind of shrouding the world right now. So that's okay. So any complaints I have, and believe you me, I have lots, are very first world, actually. So, actually, I don't have lots, but it's a weird thing.
It is a weird thing.
It's sort of, you know, anthropologists talk about liminal zones, places kind of like no man's land, places where you're neither in one place or the other, and sort of feels like everything is, animation is suspended. I get very self-conscious about the way hours pass, and should I be working now, or, you know, should I not? Should I be listening to music? I mean, I don't literally ask myself those questions, but there's an air of artificial self-organization about it.
But isn't it quite, I mean, isn't that the normal writer's life, having to organize your day from the beginning to the end? Do you feel
but I'm
this is
fantastically
different?
good at organized distraction, unlike you. That's to say, you know, I do TV and radio and journalism. You once did that. And so this is a good way. And that is a kind of, I mean, we could do journalism from the desk, but that is a kind of way of, I mean, the optimistic or the benign view of that is you're doing all these things possibly because you're scatterbrained, but or terrified of actually getting back to a daunting thing called manuscript. But also it makes a special space for when you are doing nothing but book writing. I don't know, that all that kind of, I like the kind of buzzy, noisy, unanticipated interferences of all that somehow.
I actually find that particular time when you're bored, but you're working, seemingly doing nothing or seemingly doing something very trivial like the dishes or something, but still working, I find that time has disappeared because I can make myself sit down and write. I can work, but it's that in between time when a lot of work is going on that has been more difficult to reach in this strange time.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, sometimes the best kind of, you know, improbable creativity happens the washing up moment, or the cooking moment for me, certainly.
The cooking moment, is that when you get your ideas? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, the ones that really, in the end, turn out to count, you know, sort of the counterintuitive things, really. Yeah, that's sort of gone. Also because actually we have a kind of extended family commune here, basically. 3 small, adorably loud boys and the au pair. And so actually I could use a bit more isolation, really. Not really everyone out there, not really. I'm very grateful for the company, but yeah, there is something odd and distorted about the chopping up of the day, I think.
So I was thinking, I mean, you are a historian, and has your experience of time changed during the years you've worked with history? I mean, time has been your field, it's been your tool.
No, I don't think so. Interesting, it has. That is true, but you know, you'd expect I guess, that one's sense of actually grip on time present and time past, would change simply as you get older.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing to say, okay, I'm, as Gore Vidal once said to me, he said he was in the springtime of his senility, which I love. And so I'm bursting with that daffodil-strewn sense of mortality. It's good, isn't it? And yeah, so you would expect, but actually not. I think actually when you do time travel in a historical literary way, even as a child, you weirdly think of yourself as dwelling in another kind of time capsule or another place altogether. You have to kind of really feel yourself deeply in that particular moment. And that I wouldn't say has changed a lot, I think. I mean, I think actually that what the present ghoulishness has done is that there are so many calls on one to sort of think about other moments of plague and terror and the disintegration of social conventions and the way we normally spend each and every day. So I've sort of kind of almost artificially wired the plagues of the 17th century and cholera panics in the 19th century towards our present predicament. I usually resist that. When I do the kind of jump into time, you may feel that as well. You really say goodbye to the present moment until the washing up calls, So I don't think that's changed particularly.
No. Well, I mean, it's a very, it's a trend that I think we're sort of slaves under at the moment. And it's been for maybe a decade that as soon as we talk about something in past, we have to connect it to the present. Otherwise, people don't seem to be interested in the past.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a value of its own, which I think it should have. But it's this sort of you always have to make it into a present
So it becomes a kind of
analogy.
it becomes a kind of editorial, really, about that happened then. Is it happening now?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you interpret the history through the present in a way that isn't always working. You don't get wiser by that.
I think very, very good writing, manages really to anchor people into a past for its own sake. I mean, Hilary Mantel's last volume, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. I mean, it is really, for me, easily the best of the three, and it is extraordinary. And what it delivers, I think, much more than it's called The Mirror and the Light, and the trilogy has been about Henry VIII's terrifying, bureaucratic organizer of everything, including divorces and beheadings, Thomas Cromwell. Apart from that, it really does deliver a whole kind of sensory universe, colors, textures, weathers, buildings, moods, tastes. I mean, it's really kind of almost Tolstoyan in that way, something I don't usually say. And it's had a huge success. I mean, the whole of her work has had enormous success, but there is something peculiar about, I don't know if that's true in Sweden, about, does everybody want to live with Gustavus Adolphus or Queen Christina? But people do have a kind of fixation about the Tudors, and that does baffle me slightly, but that's certainly there. And it's certainly for its own sake, I think, really. So it can happen. I mean, great historical novels. I love Margaret Yourcenar's about your work very much. Memoirs of Hadrian, but also some of the other, Etudes en Noir, The Abyss, and a wonderful book of novellas called Two Lives and a Dream. Do you know that one? Yeah.
No,
that's in Holland.
Yeah, I read
really
Yourcenar too young. I have to reread her because I was too young when I read her, I think.
Yeah. There's a lovely story which, non è vero è ben trovato, but I like to think it's true, that she spent the war in Switzerland and then with her female partner, and then went to live with, I think she was called Grace Gluck, I think that's right. Anyway, live with her for the rest of her life in an island off Maine, in northeast harbor in Mount Desert Island. And the trunks were being unpacked, so we're in 1946 or something like that, and she was going through letters that she'd written, And there were some that she'd somehow, for wartime reasons, hadn't sent. And she found a letter that began, "Cher Mark," dear Mark. And she thought, I don't know anybody called Mark, actually. And of course, it was the abandoned manuscript of the Memoirs of Hadrian, which were done in the form of letters to Marcus Aurelius, to his protege and I think nephew. And and she claimed she didn't. It took her a while to recognize which epoch she was in, really. As I say, she's very good at writing about time and historians' mentality and historical novelists' mentality, I think.
Yeah,
definitely. You ever been tempted to do a deep historical novel? I mean,
if I have?
Yeah.
I don't know. Have I? No, I think I'm not, no, I don't know. I've sort of been guided by, this sounds terrible. I've been guided by pain in my writing. So, yeah, sorry, sounded pretentious and terribly serious. But so I've been, I have to.
Just so long as you don't write your own autobiography called Guided by Pain.
Well, maybe I already have. I don't know.
You didn't title it like that.
I think maybe soon I'll be free from, a lot of stuff that I had to write, and I'll go further. So we'll see.
Where are you going to go then?
I think.
Unfair question.
Yes, that's a terrible question. As I think we have had a little conversation, and I have been thinking about Hannah Arendt, and combining her look at the world with another person who I find very interesting. But we'll see. I probably won't go there.
You're allowed to have a break, I think, actually.
Well, as I talked about it, it probably won't happen because the best ideas.
What do you think of? We're talking about time and maybe just the way in which time folds in on itself for most people. In a weekly way. I mean, the weekend would have disappeared up here completely, and that's an odd, it's a kind of mood caesura, isn't it? But we have a lovely farmers market in our local town, which used to be a kind of very joyous throng, really, although with terrible kind of Bob Dylan impersonators, really, sort of making me sick. Really, the real Bob Dylan I wouldn't mind, but he refuses to show up here. But the farmers market now, we're all masked and we're all socially distanced, and so I find it difficult to talk to my friend the fish seller, really, with a mask on, and he's got a sort of sexy mask on, and so all that's slightly austere and monastic and miserable as well.
Well, this is I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, but I mean, this is what I've been thinking a lot about when it comes to time, and this time, because it feels already like an era. It's been going on for what, 2 months, and it's already a sort of a whole Corona era. The world is different. It's not what it was, and we don't know what it'll be. And I mean, can you think of a time or a similar period in time that reminds you of this? Or is this something completely unique that we're going through now?
No, I think it's often so as expected of historians that they'll kind of pull a helpful precedent out of their hat, like amiable, spring rabbit. But it's not. It is completely unprecedented. I think if you think about, nobody went around in the later 14th century. They did say we're in a terrible purgatory of a world now, we're being punished for God's sins, but nobody kind of labeled it as it's the Black Death. What do we do now? But it's okay, everyone, because feudalism, ça ne durera pas, won't last, because there are a few of us around and we can negotiate with the Lord. That remained for dull 20th century historical academic seminars. Nobody was saying that. An extraordinary thing, really, which is not so great to think about, because bubonic plague went on for centuries until the early 18th century. I think Marseille was the last really big one in Europe. People became accustomed to 20, 30-year cycles of ferocious visitation. So, for example, when you know, the 1630 plague, which is a really terrifying one, swept through Venice and Milan and northern Italy, kind of the same area that we experienced this year. People sort of assumed that, you know, the coffins would pile up, it would be a terrible thing. And then you really just go back the way it was. I think Venice was one of the first places which lost more than a third of its population. And people were, for a long time, scared of going to Venice until, you know, the 18th century. And even then, Carnival started to have this very macabre kind of edge to it you see in the paintings of Gian Domenico Tiepolo. And so that changed. Cholera, again, once the science got going and water pipes were changed, and it was even before the kind of microbiology was properly thought out, people really did think life would go on before. After the Spanish flu influenza epidemic, you know, the Roaring Twenties happened. Nothing qualitative changed at all. So where we're here now, because we are globally traveling far more than has ever been the case before, people are, me and you and others, accustomed to hit the airport. You know, that this is different, really. And it, as you absolutely rightly say, difficult to know how we'll adjust to narrowed opportunities, sort of narrowed path of freedom, I think. It's not a good thing.
Yeah, I was shocked just a couple of weeks ago. There was a headline in a Swedish paper saying that the 9th of April, it'll be the last plane to Britain will leave. I never thought I'd see that headline. That was
Ever?
well, who knows? Who knows? At the moment,
You'll just have to swim. God.
exactly. Well, take the boat. Take the boat. Like, yeah.
I don't believe that. What are their grounds for saying that? There's money to be made in putting on at least one a week.
Yeah, no, but it's for now, and it's because of everything closing down. And
I see.
So we'll just see. Maybe there are flights in the air now.
For now is an important thing to add on to the end of that. How will I come and see you otherwise?
Well, we'll have to discuss that.
Very well.
I should have been in New York now, this very day.
I know. New York is very upset about that.
Yeah, I'm a bit upset about that too. But there we are. But
the vaccine thing, not to be childishly optimistic about it, but the vaccine thing is real. It's not say it will qualify the sobering up that we've been talking about. But you know, if you actually read, I don't know if you're familiar with the work happening in Oxford, a woman called Sarah Gilbert, who's professor of vaccinology. I mean, she's very serious and the opposite from a politician. She tells hard truths, but first thing she says is that she was terribly lucky because they were working on MERS and SARS and comparable kinds of viruses. So they had a head start in genetic manipulation, and you know, they've started human trials. So, I mean, we're not talking about you coming to New York in the next couple of weeks, alas. But, you know, it's overly pessimistic and apocalyptic to think there is no end in sight to this particular horror. We all will have to adjust to the likelihood of other kinds of monstrous epidemics breaking out. That's for sure.
No, it's just that I've been searching through my not very long life experience, but not very short either. And there's nothing I can recall. I mean, I think the Second World War is the closest to this, the same kind of consequences, closed borders, closed homes, food shortage, people unemployed. And, but I mean, this time is, I think it's very interesting, and it will be extremely interesting when it's over, I think, because it's sort of undressed a lot of the world, undressed the welfare systems and undressed the leaders, and also undressed a lot of the democratic principles and how holy they are or unholy. I mean, there's a lot of things that has happened the last months that I never thought would happen.
What are you thinking of? I mean, you're right.
Well, of course, a crisis is a crisis, but I mean, just telling people not to be more than 10 people in one place, or the way I just passed sorry, a huge place in Copenhagen where people gather and have drinks and picnics, and they jump in the canal. And that is now, they've drawn white lines like on a tennis lawn.
Mm.
So there are big squares all over the grass where only 10 people are allowed in each square. So this free space has now been organized, and it's of course crisis handling, but it's also something else. It's a very strictly regulated life.
Yeah, it's trimming our humanity. I know. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. And just because actually here in the United States, that sort of issue has been kind of absurdly distorted into an attack on individual freedom and all the rest of it. You know, we always trade off tiny pieces of our sense of being autonomous individuals for the sake of many different kinds of security. That's just part of being and has been in the modern world. But you're absolutely right. This is of a different kind of order. And I think the other thing that I think is grievous, really, and I don't know what is going to happen, is that one thing that you know, heartened me about living in a digital universe was the unlikely consequence that actually live moments of human gathering at the theatre, the sort of occasion you and I were talking at, beautiful occasion in Stockholm, literary festivals. One mustn't be too grandiose, you know, about saying poor literary festivals, but all sorts of live events were blooming precisely because people did not want to live as the way you and I are talking right now, did not want to live purely electronically and virtually, and actually craved the sort of sense of live human company and action, and indeed the kind of benevolence of the crowds as well, the kind of, you know, think of places like the Globe Theatre, that kind of wonderful kind of outdoor space for the groundlings, really, which were kind of feeding on each other's good humor and back and forth between the actors. And what can happen to that? And that is something to really feel
Well, the
less about, I think.
vaccine. I put my trust and my faith in the science. The vaccine will save
Yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah.
And but I agree, and it's such a strange thing now that isolating oneself, putting on masks or gloves or whatever, is a way of showing tenderness towards someone
Yeah,
else.
no, right. Yes.
It's I feel this is a time of paradoxes all the
Yes, I
time.
care about you, therefore you really don't want to see me.
Exactly.
I've just made this, I think I told you about it in our nice email connections, that I made this film about Rembrandt, and
And it's on BBC now, isn't it?
it is on iPlayer if you can get it, yes. And it's a lovely film, but the museum in Oxford where the show still hangs, I think actually, most of it's not been sent back to its various homes, is shut. So the idea was that I write a script. I'd seen the show by some miracle before they shut their doors on March the 17th, and they sent a cameraman, a lone cameraman, in there who would work according to his own genius in this case, but also to some extent according to my directions. And it had two effects. One, there was something really poetically melancholy about the empty spaces, but also it gave a chance for the viewer and Rembrandt's, particularly the works on paper, interestingly enough, the etchings and drawings, to be extremely unmediated, to be very present, and people loved it. And the other thing I think they loved was not seeing me, was actually just listening to me. and I think either self-consciously or not, my voice is really, even by my relatively cheerful standards, I'd say kind of kindly, really, in the commentary. Yeah, so I think the future for me, masked or not, is benevolent invisibility, really. But
Oh, okay. We'll have a discussion about that another time. I don't agree, and I don't think that'll happen. So yeah, don't believe that. But I will have a look at the Rembrandt series or the Rembrandt
it's just
episode.
one program. Yeah, there are
Yeah,
other very
exactly.
good programs in the fall. It's called, I mean, Sweden should do that maybe, because it's called Culture in Quarantine.
Mm.
And this little bit of it is called Museums in Quarantine.
Mm.
And in fact, I am doing radio, which about 4 museums and what they meant to the Prado, the Rijksmuseum, the Courtauld Gallery, and the Whitney in New York. And I'm picking 2 or 3 pictures in that, which I'll talk about on radio. But it's more a sense about, you know, what the museum, how the museums have been cherished by the communities in which they've been founded and had a life. And that's a very nice idea. So there are, I don't know if radio is going through a golden age, maybe it is, but people are fighting for new ways to connect.
Yeah. Yes, and I think that particular thing has probably been going on for a long time with all the pods. People have become more used to listening to things and have the equipment and are respected when they want to listen.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes. There's
so
a lovely.
Is this on BBC? I'm sorry, but are these radio shows on BBC?
They will be. We haven't done them yet. The radio, yes. So those you will be able to hear. People, BBC through something called BBC Sounds makes sound archive available to anybody wherever you are. So you just go to BBC Sounds, and it's a television. I mean, if the BBC was sensible, they would actually charge a subscription and make, you know, the back recording, television recordings available. But there's some complicated legal thing anyway.
Well, I have this illegal thing that makes me I can see BBC, although I shouldn't be able to. So, but we won't talk about that now. Simon, I'm sorry.
Pass it on.
Yes, I will. But tell me, I was just thinking about what you were talking when we were talking about food, because this is something that I mean, I know you've worked with food, you've been a food critic, you've cooked a lot, you still do. And now I hear you get your best ideas, some of them, whilst cooking.
I do, yes. Mm-hmm. It depends. There are particular idea dishes.
Okay, which are they?
The scrambled eggs. Now, okay, everyone out there, you think you know how to cook scrambled eggs. You probably do, Elisabeth. But there are certain rules about really perfect scrambled eggs. And that is, you never do it in a frying pan. You always do it in a saucepan, because it's got to retain its moisture. And it has to be done very, very slowly. It's not a quick breakfast or a lunch. So you don't just kind of fry these suckers up and shove them around with forks. No, 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 no. You add some milk, and then you put them on the lowest possible heat, and you stand there stirring. So risotto is another example. It is the kind of risotto principle. So it requires patience, and I'm not famous for that particular quality. So while I'm there with my wooden spoon stirring away, that is occasionally looking down and gradually see little beads and pearls of egg resolve themselves into something creamy and exquisite. Are we getting hungry out there, everyone? I hope so.
Yeah.
You are. Good. That is a big idea thing. So slow and low are very good for contemplating things often, you know, that you got wrong in the writing the previous day, or sort of moves you want to make that you hadn't thought of the day before. Really often, I mean, you're probably different, but my kind of writing often, you know, happens most creatively when I'm revising. I mean, I'm very anxious not to sit with a blank screen, so I just plunge in, and it's kind of clumsy sometimes and knotty, and I realize it's like blurting, that, you know, kind of one long blurted out set of prose just to take the plunge. So then comes at the end of the day, when you look with horror at some of the things you've done, and then comes that long scrambled egg risotto process of actually thinking, oh well, here's the way I should have done it. And then that kind of second tier of creativity, that second order of creativity kicks in, and cooking is very, very good for that. There is fast cooking as well, which is hopeless. You know, you're just trying to juggle pots and pans, which I like doing as well, but it's a different kind of thing.
Okay, no, I completely understand this, and I also find that, I mean, the white sheet or whatever, white screen is it can be terrifying. So I always tell myself, write first, delete after, or write first,
Yeah.
edit afterwards. I completely understand that. And risotto mindfulness comes to my mind.
Risotto mindfulness. I like that. Yeah.
It sounds very good. But yeah, this is so we're at the end of our sort of small time frame here, but before that, I would like to hear, has this particular time of quarantine and lockdown and whatever, has it changed your mind concerning what you're going to do next or in the future?
A little bit. I mean, one thing that we haven't talked about, maybe next time round, is that I read a book about landscape many years ago, 25 years ago practically, and people have been responding again to that. I mean, it may be the one book of mine that survives and flourishes most powerfully, I think, actually, and I almost stumbled on that particular subject. But one thing that's happened to everybody is that this great pause in industrial and post-industrial commotion has cleared the skies. And, certainly up our river valley, we had the most radiant moon. And many, many people have commented on the kind of glorious indifference of nature, really, to our own trials and tribulations and ordeals right now. So it's made me think. I mean, I've been talking this morning in computer terms with a friend of mine who's a producer about what we might do about that. But the second thing is that I think we might have talked about this. I'm doing a book about the return of atavistic nationalism. Really, everyone is, I know, but there's a chapter on music and a chapter on sport. It's slightly different. It's almost a kind of anthropology of national feeling going back to the 18th century. And there, I think, I do want to say, I mean, it strikes me as slightly horrifying the way in which the kind of principle of we're all in it together, the kind of involuntary globalization of, viruses don't really care about shutting barriers. So there's, on the one hand, there's that, and on the other hand, there is the defensive reaction that we must all retreat to our own particular patch, really. So that seemed to me not an artificially, it would be very odd to write the book I have in mind and not preface it with a chapter which is a kind of report from now. But you'll tell me if it's clumsily topical.
No, I want to read it. Please write it.
Well,
thank you for this talk.
Thank you for the...
See you soon, I hope.
Yes, that would be very nice.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching Jewish Culture in Sweden online. I'm Elisabeth Åsbrink, and I hope to see you again soon here. There's more information about this series on Jewish Culture's website. And until then, stay safe.